New alarm bells ringing tonight on the coronavirus outbreak in this country.
Doctors say the virus is spread through droplets when someone coughs or sneezes.
And I think the business community, it's in their interest that people actually stay home and stop the spread.
For a business that can allow more employees to telecommute, we want you to do that.
Talk about China's high-tech fight against coronavirus, robots delivering food in hospitals, facial recognition cameras taking people's temperatures, and drones enforcing lockdowns and quarantines. But what about the tech we can't see? China's sophisticated and controversial data surveillance system is used to track citizens on and offline.
健康码运用大数据监控后台大数据精密指控
And it's proving extremely effective during the pandemic. The mass surveillance network has taken the Communist Party decades to build. They've faced near constant criticism for it around the world.
Today, 6.6 million Americans applied for unemployment benefits last week alone. That's nearly 10 million workers now applying for unemployment in just 2 weeks. Tonight, the workers from Iowa to New York to Florida, and here's Rebecca Jarvis.
Tonight, the swelling number of people out of work, that parallel catastrophe to the virus itself. The speed of layoffs unprecedented, the pain being felt across the country.
I know I was not prepared for this.
Never been put in this position before, never thought I would have to be in this position.
All told, in just 2 weeks, nearly 10 million Americans have filed for unemployment insurance. Those numbers don't include the self-employed or the many Americans who've been trying to apply but can't, like Todd Saland in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, who lost his job as a server on March 17th.
I immediately filed on their website, which took days, honestly, to file.
After completing the initial paperwork after 5 days of trying, Todd was told to check back on March 31st. He did.
And everything is now still marked pending. So I know everybody probably is experiencing the exact same frustrations.
The nightmares at sea have haunted the world for months. From Japan to California, and now to South Florida. The Holland America Zaandam has been at sea for nearly a month. 305 Americans were among the more than 1,800 people who started their journey on March 7th in Buenos Aires. That was supposed to end in San Antonio, Chile. But this epic South American vacation cruise did not turn out quite like they hoped. This morning, they are still testing passengers and crew on this ship.
They knocked at our door with masks on, and they took our temperature.
Just days into their trip, the World Health Organization officially labeled the COVID-19 crisis a worldwide pandemic, and passengers and crew started falling ill. The ship was turned away from port after port, even the Panama Canal at one point blocking it.
This is our new home.
Passengers on board feeling trapped.
We have been quarantined since the 22nd without being able to go outside.
I feel abandoned and I feel betrayed.
In all, 250 people on board reported flu-like symptoms, and 4 older guests have died, including American Jeffrey Hagender.
These are human beings.
His niece Leanne speaking with ABC News, her widowed Aunt Lucia still on board.
She's super isolated, and you can't properly grieve until you can hug your daughter and your son and, start the process.
The Zaandam had no COVID-19 tests on board, so Holland America sent in another ship, the Rotterdam, to deliver supplies and those critical tests. The cruise line started moving some passengers without symptoms to the Rotterdam. The company.
With so many aspects of our lives shutting down, it can be reassuring to see some things keep going.
First mission for the United States Space Force.
A successful mission on Thursday launched from Cape Canaveral in Florida, with a $1.4 billion communications satellite on board.
And we have jettison of all 5 SRBs.
Other parts of the space industry, though, are dealing with astronomical headaches, just like everybody else.
We understand that the International Space Station may possibly be the safest place on Earth over the next few months.
The next men to leave the planet have been under heavy quarantine in Russia's Star City, forced to say goodbye to their families several weeks ahead of schedule. That's to ensure they don't bring COVID-19 to the International Space Station next week.
it's really interesting. It's none like any other time in our lives as a generation, really, right? Like, to me, this goes into where were you when JFK was shot? Where were you when you landed on the moon? And where were you when coronavirus was happening? And I'll have my own interesting story to tell in years to come.
For nearly a decade, the U.S. has relied on Russia to fly its astronauts into low Earth orbit. But that will change in a few weeks if all goes according to plan.
Go on 2 for grab sample container.
NASA and the private American aerospace company SpaceX say the launch of a crewed mission will go ahead in mid to late May, regardless of the pandemic back on Earth. There's a lot riding on the mission, giving the U.S. the capacity to send its own people into space once again. Timelines for other missions will certainly have to be pushed back.
3, 2, 1, ignition.
NASA's new Orion spacecraft is scheduled to take the next man and first woman to the lunar surface in 2024. NASA is also building the world's most powerful rocket to get them there, and then hopefully to Mars. But the plant producing the rocket is just outside of New Orleans, which has one of the highest rates of new coronavirus infections in the world. The agency shut nearby rocket production and testing facilities on March 19th, then others across the country to protect its workforce.
When you work on a rocket, a lot of people have to work very close to each other, and that could have really spread quickly.
It's even affecting spacecraft already millions of kilometers from Earth. The European Space Agency has put 8 of them in what's known as hibernation mode because of reduced staffing, and has suspended its launches indefinitely. Even with delays on the next generation of their spacecraft, NASA astronauts are busy performing a different public service, sharing advice on how to cope with isolation at home after they survive the isolation of space.
As the world tries to get a grip on COVID-19, many countries are looking to the model for answers. Here's how they're doing it in South Korea.
They're using your phone to locate where you are, and then they'll send you an emergency alert if you're anywhere near where a confirmed coronavirus patient has been.
Singapore, Israel, Iran, Taiwan, and Russia have all adopted some or all of the Chinese methods to temporarily harness the power of data. More are expected to follow. So how does China's data surveillance system work, and how is it useful in a pandemic? It all starts with this, a national ID card. You need one to pretty much do anything in China. From buying a mobile phone to using any app, everything you do leaves a data trail linked back to your ID. In areas in lockdown, phone location data is being used to monitor movement and enforce curfews. If a patient is meant to be in quarantine, geolocation pings on their phone can alert authorities if they stray out of their homes. Phone location data is also being used to map exactly where that person visited in the 2 weeks before being diagnosed. A combination of human and automated computer analysis work out who they may have infected. If they went on a train and got too close to other commuters, a text message is sent out through one of the major apps, alerting those at risk. Every person is being assigned a coloured QR code depending on the risk they pose. Green, no risk. Orange, they've entered a potential virus hotspot. And red, if they've tested positive for the virus and could still be contagious. None of this cyber surveillance would be any good without the Chinese state's strict enforcement teams too. Police and volunteers have literally manned the exits of apartment blocks to keep places on lockdown. But in countries where these data surveillance powers are being brought in to help deal with coronavirus, some people are worried about the long term.
My name is Adam Schwartz. I am a senior lawyer at the Electronic Frontier Foundation. There is a great concern that when government gets new powers in a crisis, government never gives those powers away even when the crisis ends. So, for example, in the wake of the 9/11 attacks, the United States created vast new surveillance powers. 19 years later, those powers are still very much in the hands of the U.S. government.
As New York City battles the coronavirus, neighbors are getting through it with music.
How's it going? I'm Eric Carey here.
I'm Valentine Carey.
and this is the third day of our under quarantine, trying to get some of our neighbors here in beautiful New York City to help have a nice moment of peace and music and community and enjoyment from up here on our rooftop.
The Careys, who are both attorneys, live on East 77th Street in Manhattan. Each night, they've been hosting 6 p.m. sing-alongs with their neighbors.
It's been really nice. I think people really appreciate the positive message and the community and unity that music brings. There were a couple of people the first day, and then yesterday there were over a dozen, I think. So we're doing it again today at 6 p.m.
The sweet trend started in Italy, where people have been on lockdown because of the coronavirus pandemic for weeks. In addition to applauding healthcare workers and first responders, Italians raised their voices for one another. It soon took off, with entire neighborhoods bursting into song. People in Germany took to their balconies in solidarity with Italy. Italy was the first European country where the number of infections and deaths caused by the virus exploded. Since then, the global nature of the COVID-19 crisis has led to global opportunities to join together in song. An opera singer in Paris has been serenading his neighbors with his beautiful voice. With France on lockdown because of the virus, song is a way to feel connected, he says.
When you speak about solidarity and sharing some emotions, I think in this moment is the most important.
And it's clear they appreciate his talents.